Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is my colleague, fellow Forbes reporter, Phoebe Liu. Phoebe, thanks for coming on.
Brittany, it's great to be here.
Forbes just released our Billionaires list, and I want to talk about the tech sector in relation to the list. This past year was a really tumultuous year for tech. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. So this year, tech billionaires lost almost $200 billion in cumulative wealth. There were, or at least Forbes found 313 of them, worth $1.9 trillion in total, which seems like a lot, but it's 200 billion less than last year and another 400 billion less than 2021, which was kind of the peak in like the whole tech sector, sky high valuations, all of that before it came kind of crashing down, still worth a lot, but much less than before.
Can you peel back the curtain for us a little bit? Why was this year so tumultuous when it comes to tech?
Yeah, for sure. So I think a lot of the wealth that big tech billionaires have is concentrated in their public company stock. So for example, like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, all of those stocks are down probably somewhere between 30 and 35-ish% from last March, which was when we froze stock numbers for our 2022 list. And because of that, and because the often billionaire founders of these companies own so much of the stock, that has pushed their net worths down. I want to caveat one thing, that this 200 billion number is a lot, but it could be a lot more because we actually recategorized a couple of like pretty wealthy tech people that were previously in other categories. So two notable ones that comprise probably 100 billion plus of wealth. One is the ByteDance founder, Zhang Yiming. We previously had him in media and entertainment because like TikTok, which is owned by ByteDance, is kind of a media company, but because he kind of rose to fame in the tech sector and we associate him with tech, this year we moved him back to tech, and the same goes with Mark Zuckerberg, which like we know him as a Silicon Valley guy, and Facebook now rebranded as Meta, and the two of them together like are adding to the tech sector's wealth and adding another 100 billion or so to it. So the drop would actually have been quite a bit bigger.
So when we're comparing the lists year over year, specifically let's do last year, how many tech billionaires are on this year's list?
Yeah, so this year Forbes found 313 tech billionaires. That's down from 332 last year and 365 the year before. The drop from last year to this year can largely be explained by, well, there were actually 53 tech billionaires that dropped off the list, which is more than any other sector. I think finance and investments and manufacturing come like second and third with like 40-something and 30-something respectively. So that's like a pretty big number. But because of the recategorization, we added, I think, 13 more to tech. And then we had 13 or 14 new tech billionaires, like 3 returnees, and like one where there were like 2 siblings that we split into 2 files. So that kind of explains the change from last year.
Who are a few billionaires on this year's list that are still on the list, but they lost a lot of money from last year?
Yeah, so I guess one of the big headline trends for tech billionaires this year, which is a little bit as expected, which is the biggest figures in tech, like those big tech guys, lost the most because I guess they had the most to lose. I think the top 5 included something like Jeff Bezos was the one who lost the most. He lost, I think, 57 billion because Amazon stock shares are down like 38%. After that, the Google co-founders, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, they're both down like more than 30 billion. And then same goes with Microsoft's Gates and Ballmer. And I think those were, like, if not the top 5, like 5 of the top 7 or something like that. So that's like one of the biggest groups of people who like lost the most like gross amount of their wealth. The other group is like our tech unicorns, so private companies valued at more than $1 billion. A lot of them saw like steep valuation cuts. Like last year and this year, some of them did layoffs as well. Layoffs kind of happened across the tech industry, but for unicorns specifically, a couple of notable people like Stripe's Collison brothers, and then Canva, the graphic design companies, Perkins and Obrecht, all four of them, because of valuation cuts, either internal or external, those founders lost more than 40% of their wealth. So that was the other kind of big trend in this year's tech money.
Can we unpack that a little more? Why was it not such a good year for tech unicorns?
Yeah, for sure. So I think broader market forces is like the long and short of it, because there's kind of like general fears of a recession, rising interest rates, like layoffs. All of that has driven like stocks and valuations broadly pretty far down. I think like the tech-heavy NASDAQ is down like 18% from when we froze numbers from last year's list, I think March 11th, 2022. So I think that's kind of what happened in broad strokes. And then some people would say that in 2021, like right as we were, I don't know, starting to recover from the initial like hit of the COVID-19 pandemic and things like that, a lot of people were like really eager to invest. A lot of people were really online, which like helps the tech industry. And because of all of that buzz, valuations shot up really big. The big tech companies especially like went on huge hiring sprees, which now they're having to correct via layoffs. And I think depending on who you ask, like some people will say that we got too excited in 2021 and now we're kind of suffering the consequences via correction.
Relative to that, do you think it's going to be a good year for tech looking ahead? Do you think they will correct themselves? Or do you think it's still going to be this rocky, bumpy road?
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not someone who like predicts the market, but from everyone I've spoken to and from what I can tell, it's like not quite on a road to recovery yet, especially with like the banking crisis that's happening right now. That's like, I don't know, continuing to perpetuate like fears that the market isn't as good as like we think it is. And like interest rates are still higher than, I guess, the free money era of a couple of years ago. So I don't think it's gonna happen yet. I think one interesting thing that I have seen in a couple of tech companies that have done layoffs is that their stock prices increased following that because people are like, oh, maybe they're doing things to become profitable again or something like that. So it's possible that the actions that people are taking now in valuation cuts and layoffs will like help it do better again in the future, but I don't think it's going to be the near future, if that makes sense.
And aside from the two trends that you saw, which were the top tech billionaires losing their wealth a little bit, as well as the tech unicorns, it not being the best year for them, are there any other trends or common themes that you're seeing once you compiled this year's list heading into the next year?
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, I think those were the two biggest things that I saw. I'm sure if you talk to someone who's been like really in the weeds of this industry for longer, they might be able to offer more insight, but I don't have anything else to add.
Phoebe, I do want to take a step back here and talk about the list as a whole. So relative to all the other industries, how big is the tech sector among the world's richest?
Yeah, so it's still really big. It's still the biggest. So the 1.9 trillion that all tech billionaires are worth altogether, that's still 170 billion more than the next most lucrative. So like fashion and retail at like 1.7, and then finance investments after that at like 1.6. But in terms of the number of billionaires, tech is third, which is I think the same as last year. And then I think tech was first the year before that. And then after that, it's the two industries with more billionaires than tech are finance and investments with, I think, 372 and manufacturing with 324.
Phoebe Liu, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, Brittany.